and welcome to episode 12 of our weekly guitar hangs with Nick Granville in Wellington, myself in Auckland, and lovely to see you again, Nick. It's been a while.
You too, yeah. I was just thinking the way you do that, you have a very proper voice.
Yeah, and then it all turns into shit.
Well, if it was me doing it, gee, it's the Hutt Valley represent over here.
Yeah, no, I just have to be a bit formal at the start and like get myself into that, zone for like 10 seconds, and then I'm like, okay, cool, that's done.
Yeah, totally. Lots to discuss today. Actually, I was thinking about it earlier. There's been a lot of happening in the guitar world and things at the moment.
Yeah,
so
we will have a nice fun chat today, I think. So first thing I think we should talk about is both of us went to see James Taylor on 2 consecutive nights, me in Auckland on the 30th and Nick in Wellington last night. Not the usual guitar player Michael Landau that we are all used to seeing with James, but we had the amazing Dean Parks on guitar.
Yeah,
and
wow.
he also played a bunch of pedal steel. And what I didn't realize is how much of the old James Taylor catalog, the studio versions, had a lot of pedal steel on them. And listening to all those songs with the pedal steel, it just, tugged at the heartstrings a little bit more.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because if Landau had been there to do the gig,
the
sound would have been completely different. You know what I mean? Because I kind of thought too, like when Dean took solos, because he took 2 solos and 2 things, both of them he used wah wah or some kind of, but he didn't really sweep through it that much. He kind of used it more like a vowel sound.
Yep.
And I don't know if he did that in Auckland or not.
He did, and here's the interesting thing. So when he did that, I turned to my wife and said, "Did you know that's him on Haitian Divorce?" Because he did those talk box parts, right? And suddenly, like, just the way he was playing, it just, like, gave me flashbacks to listening to that intro. And the funny thing is, on Haitian Divorce, he played it without any wah or talk box, and then Walter Becker did it later.
Edited afterwards, I heard that.
He reamped it off the thing into the talk box and did the wah 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 part. But just, I don't know, kind of just hearing him with that formant filter kind of thing, it was like, bang, that's the guy.
I know, right? And it was just, he's such a legend. Yeah. It's funny, I was sitting next to this dairy farmer couple from the Manawatu, and she was a James Taylor fan, and he was like just coming along for the ride. But they were nice people, but they didn't know who the band were or anything. And I said, I kind of came to see the guitar player more than anything. And I sort of told them a few of the things that he'd done, and they were like, you could see their mind just going, wow, okay, Yeah, Dean Parks, I mean, such a legend. I'm so stoked, if nothing else, I've got to see Dean Parks play live. Because I haven't seen him play yet.
And Steve Gadd on drums, man. How cool was that?
Yeah, I've seen Steve Gadd play before, though, a couple of times. I saw him at Catalina's in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And then I saw him with the Roger Fox Big Band when he was in New Zealand. But he was different seeing him playing with that band. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
That was an all-star band, really. I mean, I was thinking about it. There was really no weakness at any point in their band.
Yeah.
Even down to the sound mix. The sound mix was incredible.
And Jimmy Johnson on bass. Have you heard the stuff he did with this band called Flim and the BBs?
No, I haven't. But I've heard Jimmy a bunch of times.
I should send you some of that. It's pretty cool.
He's amazing. Yeah, I've seen him twice at the Baked Potato. Once with Michael Landau and then once with another project. I forget what it was. Oh, with Simon Phillips.
Yeah.
And the Simon Phillips one was an interesting one because he played a lot of 16th note funk things.
Or like Rocco or something like that.
Yeah, he sounded like he could have been in Tower of Power the way he was playing in. And man, I had no idea he even did that thing. Because I kind of know him as like, big fat root note, like held like he does with James Taylor, you know, big fat juicy notes with just the right sound in the right place. And then this was like fusion-y, funky type stuff, and he's got chops to burn that.
He does, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to some of the older Landau live albums. There's a couple of them. One called Live 2000, and the other one was the Michael Landau Group Live from 2006. And he's on both those albums, I think. And there's a couple of places, man, he's just like going for it. He has a little bass intro in the start of one song. He starts like something like that. Pretty cool. But yeah, I've known that he's got the chops. But that Flim and the BB stuff I think is cool because I think they were recording direct to disc. They did some project like that. So they were just playing live in the studio and it got recorded onto a vinyl, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So that.
Yeah, I'd love to have seen that band with Michael Landau, but I have actually seen that entire band. Almost that entire band, but they played at Catalina's as the Steve Gadd band.
Yeah.
And it was Steve Gadd, it was Jimmy Johnson, it was...
Larry Golding?
The same piano player, which was... what's his name? Can see his face now. It's not Larry Golden. It's the guy that was doing the New Zealand one.
Oh, okay.
But Walt Fowler playing trumpet, and obviously no vocals.
Yeah.
But yeah, they sounded incredible. And Landau was just tearing it up, man.
Yeah.
He sounded so amazing.
There was one song I kind of missed Landau, which was Steamroller, because normally there's a live version from '93 or something. There's like a really nice live album with Carlos Vega on drums, and Landau's solo on that is just like boom. It just, I think they bring it down really soft, and then and bam, he just comes in like a full blast. It sounds so cool. But I mean, apart from that, I wasn't feeling any like Landau FOMO or something, being like the biggest
I mean,
fan
for me,
boy.
really, the star of the show was Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, someone told me last night, too, that Gadd's 80 now.
Yeah.
Or just about 80. And you sort of go, man, when you're 80, you're going to be killing it like that playing-wise. And I know I'll be sitting on the couch, like, if I even live that long, and I'll be sitting on the couch going, can you pass me my cup of tea, dear?
Yeah.
Or like, whereas he's out there just absolutely slaying it. And it was interesting watching him play last night, too, because I thought there was nothing he played all night that I haven't heard every other drummer able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? He did. There was nothing there that was overly complicated.
Yeah.
But he just did it better than anyone else does it.
It's the flair, I think, in which he plays it. You can see it comes across in like every movement that he makes on the kit. Like that.
My favorite is the way he plays bass drum, where he kind of almost jumps into it. Like throws his whole weight into the bass drum.
There was a bit I think he did in Walking Man. Where he just does that. It's just voice and drums.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Like the whole band drops out and he's like phrasing off the vocal kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. That was badass, I have to say.
That was one of my favorite moments of the whole show, actually. And they put the spotlight on Gadd at that moment, and I just thought, man, how cool to be like 80 or nearly 80 and like playing like that and doing that, and, just awesome.
Yeah. For the gear geeks, Dean Parks was running a Gytron GT100 amp. It's an interesting amp because it runs like two EL84s as a power stage. Then it loads them down, and then it reamps it with a quartet of 6L6s or EL34s.
Yeah, so they're essentially acting like a preamp, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like having that Fried power station built into the amp. You've just got a power section and a load, and then a reamp to get it back to full volume. He had some sort of a Fender cab, I think it was a 1x12 or something like that. He had this Vox on the side, I don't know, it didn't seem like it was mic'd or if it was on. And I couldn't really make out what he played his pedal steel through. I was tempted at the end to go and do the, photo of the pedal board, but it was like 12 rows away. I was like, nah, never mind.
Yeah, it was a great sound, but a couple of times the guitar was a little bit piercing, which was probably just where I was sitting.
I noticed exactly the same thing because I was 12 rows away from him, like right in front of the amps. I couldn't hear the amps, but on the PA, when he played that Yamaha guitar in the first set, that's when it kind of sounded a little bit ice-picky at times. And I thought I was just like, maybe in the wrong place or something. But if you noticed that too, then maybe, I don't know. But the second set he used the PRS and he sounded fine.
I think the PRS sounded better. And actually, I texted my friend Lee Jackson, who has one of those Yamahas, which he's recently got. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, what do you think of the Yamaha? And he was like, he said, I think he sounded better with the PRS.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. But I mean, we're being nitpicky because it was just awesome.
It wasn't really like anything to lessen your enjoyment of the show. It's just like, being anal bloody guitar geeks, we kind of obsess about these little things which the general public doesn't give two shits about,
No, exactly. The dairy farmers next to me had no idea about anything, and I even said to them, I said, "Oh, you do realize that's like the legendary Steve Gadd on drums?" And they said, "Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, "He's more than pretty good."
Yeah. My wife's seen him with Paul Simon before, and she got to hear him play 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. So I'm like really jealous of her.
That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah, man. That's the money.
But I mean, think about the catalogue that Dean Parks has had as well, and Jimmy Johnson. Yeah. Now the piano player is a bit of a young guy. Kevin? Oh, what's his name? I keep wanting to say Kevin Hart.
Yeah,
but it's not. No. That's the comedian actor guy, the little short guy. I can't remember. Anyway, but he's sort of the only one that's sort of a younger, up and coming player, if you will, in terms of like that level of experience. But all the others, it's like, man, there's nothing they haven't done.
The girl who
crazy.
played the violin was great as well. I think her name was Andrea Zone or something like that.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
when I was watching the video of the North Sea Jazz performance they did, he introduces her and she says now she's going to play this song on the violin called "Whiskey Before Breakfast," which reminds me of our guitar player Michael Landau.
He was telling dad jokes the whole
Oh,
the whole
man.
night, and he reckons Dean Parks told him one of them, and I was like,
Yeah.
sure. But he said a dyslexic walks into a bra.
Yeah, we got that too.
You got that same joke? And the one about Bill Withers with the I know.
I know.
Did you get that one?
That's the other one that Dean Parks told him apparently. Yeah, I know that.
All right. So it was a bit of a they were set up lines, right?
Yeah. So I think he may have recycled the jokes. Did he say that the New Zealand audiences make the Australians look like they're carved out of wood or something?
He said exactly that. Yeah. And did he pick up the set list and wobble it like a board? And oh man!
But
So it
the
was
funny
complete
thing is,
shtick.
when he picked up the set list, someone had requested this song called "Shed a Little Light," and that's one of my wife's favorite, like probably her favorite James Taylor song. And he picked it up and he said, "Yeah, it's there on the encore." So he actually told us what the encore song was.
There you go.
Yeah, but
Man.
he was pretty relaxed to the whole thing. So
Yeah.
actually, what I took away from that the most was the lighting. It was spectacular.
Yeah, the lighting was. Although I was side of stage, so I couldn't really see that.
Yeah.
The lighting was kind of lost on me a little bit.
It
And
was-
actually, mix wise, I figured I was probably only hearing
Half.
predominantly half of it. But even then, it was still like I could hear every instrument at every point. And that never happens in the TSB Arena in Wellington. Like that's a big ugly basketball court, basically, and yet it was crystal clear. And I thought, man, the sound guy just
Did
had
a
his
good
work
job.
cut out and nailed it.
Yeah, man. I have to say though, like pretty much one of the most flawless and inspiring gigs. I mean, it wasn't like super tight. There were like moments of looseness and stuff like that, but on the whole, I love the like there was like this one song where he goes deep greens and blues are the colors I choose. So every time he goes into the chorus, those colors change right at that time, and
Yeah.
it's so subtle. It's not like bam bam. Like sometimes lighting engineers just like to slap you on the face and say, "Look at all the toys I've got to play with." And sometimes,
Yeah, I thought they nailed the lighting, and every time I said to Alex, my wife, that like there'd be a piano solo and the lighting guy would be, all of a sudden he was lit up and the piano was just a notch up in the mix as well. And I was like, they were so slick with all those little things like that. They just make the whole performance go, whereas you go here and it's like, man, I don't know if you saw that video I posted on Instagram of when I did that Hotel California solo on on New Year's Eve one year, 2.5 minute guitar solo and not a single shot on camera. Because you know why? Because New Zealand camera people. Like they filmed the violinists who weren't even playing. They were sitting there with their violins like this, waiting for their moment, and they had the camera on them. And meanwhile, I'm playing the Hotel California, the most famous guitar solo of all time, probably one of,
Yeah.
And it was just like, whereas all that stuff was flawless last night with James Taylor. It was stunning. So
It reminds me of the story. There's a friend of mine in Delhi, amazing guitar player called Saiwal Basu. So apparently he was playing at this college competition, and the lighting guy got the wrong cue or something. And while he was playing the guitar solo, the light was like somewhere else. So apparently this guy with like legatoing, like shredding with one hand, tells the lighting guy, "Hey, idiot, put the light here."
oh my man, yeah. Oh, that's funny.
That's one of the stories. The legend of. So you should get him on the show sometime. He's a crack up.
Yeah, totally. There's been some interesting stuff happening in the guitar world too.
Oh, yeah.
There's the Tone X1 pedal. I don't know if you've seen that.
I saw that. I saw the Friedman IRD, which I was very tempted by, but then I was like, I don't need more gear.
Man, you can't buy it though. It's the Inland Revenue Department.
Is it?
No, IRD.
Oh, damn.
In New Zealand. When
should
it was
have
first
brought
thing
that.
I heard it, I was like,
Yeah.
what, IRD? Like the most hated organization in all of New Zealand? The people that take your taxes?
Yeah. The Inland Revenue Department. Yeah. I saw that, and I saw this. It's called a NAM loader. It
Yes.
loads
Yep.
these neural, and it was pretty decent. It was €450 in New Zealand, but for some reason when I went to check out, it didn't let me select New Zealand as a country of shipping. It kept changing it to Netherlands. I was like, hang on, this is
Maybe
wrong.
New Zealand doesn't exist
So,
as far as they're concerned.
yeah, so I
But that Tonex one, I think that's going to be a real game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because it's $179 US, I think.
Yep.
So what's that, about 300 New Zealand? Although they'll probably sell it for 500
Yeah.
here. But nonetheless, it's like, man, that's such it's a mini pedal.
Yep.
And basically it's a full amp with tuner.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, if everybody buys one as a backup alone,
Yeah.
that'd be perfect for that, because you just chuck it in your gig bag, forget it's even there.
Yep.
And then when your amp or your model or whatever you're away with goes down, boom, you got away. Or even then, if you're just traveling, like say you're going to go on tour or something, and you've got limited, you could use that as an amp. It sounded, I mean, legitimately use it on a pro gig as an amp.
Yeah.
It's got reverb in it. I mean, it's got a tuner. All you'd need would be a power supply. It's a bummer they didn't make it slightly bigger, like a full pedal size, so you could run it on battery. Because I thought that would actually be the thing, because having to run a power supply means now you need a pedal plus a power supply.
Yeah.
Whereas if it ran off battery, then you could just leave the battery in it, leave it in your gig bag. And batteries are easy to find anywhere in the world.
I think it could be that thing draws too much current, so it would like drain your battery really quickly. So then,
But if it's a backup plan, then you only need it for...
well,
maybe
could,
not.
I could wire something really quickly, which is just a battery clip into a socket.
I've got one.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of those. Yeah,
so
they're
anytime you
actually
need that,
super
just
handy.
click that in and shove it. You get like a couple of hours, I'm guessing, out of that Donex.
Yeah,
Which should be enough to
but
get
that
through a
would
gig.
maybe that would be the way for people to. But I thought when I saw that come out, because the original Tonex I thought was, and it sounded pretty good, and the form factor and all that was good, but it's not as small as this thing, you know what I mean? And I thought that was a pretty cool one to come out in the world.
I have to say though, like just on software to software, comparing Donex to Neural Amp Modeler, the Neural's got the edge on, just the way it feels and reacts to my
I've
playing
heard
at
people
least.
say that before. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but at least from my experience, I gravitated more towards the neural stuff, which is kind of why I was hoping to get my hands on that. Because the latency being 0.5, that's like super low.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fractals and all will be like 2 milliseconds, and this is 0.5 milliseconds, which is like a quarter of that.
Yeah, I think I actually checked it because I was having problems with my FM9 when I first got it, and it was 0.04 was what we got it to do, like 4 samples latency. Because I was having latency issues with it, and I couldn't figure it out. It was really weird. Like I'd go out of one output. I remember doing a gig, and I went out of one of the outputs to a Hot Rod DeVille they had, and into the return on the amp. And then I used my wireless, and I went and stood out the front, and man, it was out of time with the front of house PA.
Oh, okay.
It was like really weird. And then I did a firmware update, and it fixed it.
Okay.
So there must have been something kind of... But what I did was I was recording direct out of my guitar into Logic, and then I recorded out of the Fractal into Logic, and we compared them with... I did it with Andrew Farnham, the guy who imports... and he's the owner of Independent Music that it brings Fractal in. Yeah, and we found it was 0.04 samples latency.
Okay.
So pretty freaking tight, I think that's why those Fractal things sound so good and particularly feel so good.
Yeah.
They're the closest I've found, but I haven't tried the Neural. I couldn't get it going on my computer, so one day I will. One day when I get some free time, I'll sit down and go.
When the hardware works, but right now you can load those models into 2Notes Genome. So if you've got that...
Yes, I heard that too, yeah.
If you've got that, because I just did an update yesterday. It came out. And that worked pretty well. Here's something I thought I'd show you. I don't know if you've ever read this. This is a Gary Moore biography.
It's funny, that's not the guitar I think of for him
exactly.
at all.
But he did use it at some point. But
for sure.
It's got like a whole bunch of information on all these side projects and sessions and stuff. And one of the things I found very intriguing is in between, he left and rejoined Thin Lizzy maybe 3 times in total. But in between one of those periods, he joined this prog rock band called Colosseum 2. And the drummer was this guy called John Heisman, or Hisman, I don't know how to pronounce it. But that guy got him involved in this Andrew Lloyd Webber project. called.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of. Let me just double check the name of that project. It's called Variations from the year 1978. And it's basically
78 was a good year. That was when I was born.
there you go. I would argue the next year was even better because that was the year I was born. But it's kind of interesting. It's like almost like semi-classical, but it's got this prog rocky thing to it as well. So, I was just fascinated with listening to this totally different side to his playing. And
Well, that makes sense with Andrew Lloyd Webber, though,
Yeah.
right? Because his thing was that, kind of classical, but with prog rock. I mean, something like Jesus Christ Superstar, which would have been around that same time,
Yeah.
right? 70s was very much that, all that sort of stuff.
Now you're getting me started because I know that thing inside out. My dad played bass on one of the original versions when they had it in Bombay. So he used to keep on playing the cassettes when I was a kid. So
Oh.
one of my favorite bits was this bit where they go.
Yeah.
Something like that, very Hendrixy, but with this
Oh, man,
fat
my
fuzz.
favorite bit, without a doubt, was always...
Yeah.
I've done that show actually 3 times,
really?
and it's it's been fun actually. It's a good show.
Yeah, for sure.
what I
Especially
mean?
guitar-wise. There's a bunch of cool chord progressions and stuff going on.
Digga 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 digga. Those 7 things and stuff
Yeah.
are like really interesting kind of writing.
Or
And,
even the all those bits. What's the buzz and shit?
whatever it is, or something like
You'd
that.
love
But yeah.
chatting with my dad because that's one of his favorite bits of music.
Yeah, I've literally done it 3 times, and actually, unfortunately, the first time I did it was a bit rough. The band was,
Yeah.
and I've done it a couple of times afterwards. I'd like to actually do it again, but do it like with a really kick-ass band.
Yeah.
We just make the whole thing with. Well, it was actually probably the first show I ever saw, and my friend Lance Sewell was playing guitar, and it was the Australian production.
Mm-hmm.
John Stevens was the singer, and John Farnham was in it, I think, and the drummer was Virgil Donati.
Oh wow.
Yeah, when he was Australian, living in Australia,
Yeah.
and he's still Australian. But he, it was killer, man. It was
Well-
so good.
If you're ever doing it and you need a second guitar player, I won't need the sheet music.
Yeah. Man, you should come down and do We Will Rock You.
Oh, man.
I think they were looking for a second guitar player for it.
Really?
Yeah.
You never know.
Then we could hang out for a month. It'd be
Yeah.
tough to come down for that. For
that long. One can always hope.
Yeah.
What was I going to tell you? That the Colosseum 2 stuff that he played on, that's worth checking out as well, because his technique, I think, just went a bit nuts at that time. That's where all the chops came in. And then the 80s, I think, the stuff like what's that song, Out in the Fields, where he does that manic little run, in the middle of that solo. I don't know if you
No, I don't
heard
know.
it.
I don't know it well enough to remember that.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, that was like peak shred Gary Moore. And then, because most people know him for the blues stuff, I would think, like Still
Yeah,
Got
and
the
the-
Blues and then
which
they-
is really not really what he does he? I mean, it was him putting on a different hat, really.
yeah.
Blues, I'm like a soppy ballad, and it probably his biggest song of all.
Yeah, I don't know if you've read Bob Daisley's book, the Australian bassist who played with him, and he also played with Rainbow and Uriah Heep. So he was saying when they did the last tour just before Still Got the Blues, Gary used to keep playing blues at soundcheck and in the dressing room, and he told him, Gary, you should record a blues album, and he just thought it'd be like a one-off thing. And then he didn't realize Gary Moore would do like the whole hog and have the whole horn section and everything. So he pretty much changed the entire band.
So he made that happen,
He suggested it to him.
or suggested it.
Yeah,
Wow.
he and then next thing you know, like the whole band's changed and he's gone in a totally different direction. He did come back to the rock thing. I think in the mid 2000s he had a couple of albums. There was this one album called Dark Days in Paradise with Guy Pratt on bass. And that had some interesting sounds. I mean, he always sounded great, no matter what he played. But he was, again, a little bit like Jeff Beck, trying a few different things. And his you know.
Yeah.
And then you can hear him like, almost like follow Jeff back in certain directions. There's this one song called The Prophet, and he kind of goes a little bit Indian at the end of that. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I know he's been listening to.
I think Jeff Beck's influence was pretty strong on
Pretty
a lot of
huge,
people.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't help it whenever that's why one reason I don't listen to Jeff Beck much these days is I found when I did listen to him a lot, that was what came out. Like, you just can't help it.
Yeah.
And then you end up sounding too much like him, or trying to at least. Such a great player.
In fact, there was this song I wrote called The Last Analog Generation, and the head of it was pretty much when I wrote it. You know how you make these little notes, like you save the file under a certain, temporary name? Mm-hmm. So that temporary name was Beckish Melody.
Oh, there you go.
So then this was like kind of, something like that, and I was like, oh, I know where I got that from.
Yeah. And have you had any interesting gigs lately? What's been happening?
No gigs since I came back from India, but there's a there's a documentary that I was working on. I think half a year ago, and they suddenly came back to me and said we need it elongated because we've got permission to make a longer version. So now it's basically going into stuff I did 6 months ago and just, making each section longer and stuff like that, just adding more bars and all that stuff.
Did you write the music or just play guitar?
No, I wrote the music and played. They wanted it in like 2 days, so I turned it around super fast for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a short film at the time. It was like 3 minutes, and then now it's like 30 minutes long or something like that.
Right.
So
I've done a few of those, but usually I'm not composing. It's like like a film score, and it's like you've got 4 weeks to do the whole thing. And then invariably it's like, right, we've got 2 days to get all the guitars done for the entire film, and you're like, man, ends up being, you do long days. I even did one where I finished at 6 a.m, got in the car, drove the CD, because it's just going back some years, drove it and put it in the letterbox of the guy who was going to mix it, because he needed it then and there, And I wasn't going to knock on his door and wake his wife up, but I don't know if I told you I did a gig recently with a video game thing for this game called Stardew Valley, and it was wild, man. I've never done a gig like that. It was a chamber orchestra gig.
Okay.
So about 20-piece orchestra, very much classical players, except for me, and I was on steel string acoustic guitar. And they wanted the guitar to sound almost like a harpsichord, like really bright, and then I played banjo on a couple of tunes. But I didn't know this game at all. But apparently it's like a really big thing. Like the dude that made it sold 30 million copies of the game.
Wow.
He's made a heap of money, and they're doing 100 concerts around the world. Mm-hmm. So they put this chamber orchestra together to do this concert. There was no screen behind us. It was literally just us with a blank screen playing the music. And they packed out the Opera House in Wellington, which is maybe, I want to say 1,500 people, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night with almost no advertising. Mm-hmm. And we played this music, and as soon as we started, they're like yahooing and cheering and going berserk over this like classical music, because they recognized it from the game.
Yeah.
And then partway through the gig, and we'd been warned this was going to happen, but we didn't know when, this dude gets down on one knee and proposes to his girlfriend.
Wow.
And apparently she was from Texas and he's from Wellington, and they met playing the video game.
Wow.
And it was like
amazing.
Wild, It was so really, really crazy gig. But there's this whole world I didn't even know about of this video game Stardew Valley. So that was kind of an interesting gig,
The funny thing is, like, there was a time when I was like younger and I started to get really interested in playing video games, and then I realized that I won't have time to practice guitar or play guitar rather if I went, because I kind of almost was like borderline addicted into that stuff.
So, I know someone who did do that. He when the first PlayStation came out, like, he was the baddest guitar player around here. When Van Halen played Wellington, he got the opening slot because he was good, really good guitar player. But then PlayStation came out, and man, he went from being a really good guitar player to not playing at all, and because he just played games all day. And then I saw him like about 6 months later after this, and he was walking around hunched back because he'd been spending all day doing this and it stuffed his posture, you know. And I thought, man, I'm not getting caught up with that.
Yeah. I'm sure it's like a, you know, especially those ones which are like all alternate realities and, you know, different worlds and stuff like that. I can spend like heaps of times and all that stuff. But,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
We've got an Xbox, and I quite enjoy playing the Xbox, but yeah. I'm going in the studio tomorrow too with Darren and Leo to do some recording. There's a student here who wants to do a project for.
Oh yeah, you mentioned he's gonna engineer it and you guys are gonna play.
Yeah, so we're heading the studio tomorrow. It should be fun.
Nice.
I just put some new strings on this guitar because I had flat ones on it, and I thought I might actually take this tomorrow and see. See if there's some places I can use it because this has a sound, especially those two pickups. You know, like a Strat. It's kind of unlike anything else. It's just that sound, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been tempted to do that, but I will take my 520
That's
wherever it is.
A 25.5 scale length, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
25.5-inch scale length. And the one thing I do like about this guitar a lot is it has it's a 12-inch radius.
Oh yeah.
Man, I've got a Telecaster and it's either a 9 or a 9.5. Man, it's so round that like it frets out when you bend certain, or maybe it's 7 1/4, but it like it frets out when you burn certain notes unless you get the action like crazy high. Whereas this one's like it's quite a flat, like a Gibson radius, you know.
That's the first thing when I found this guitar, I said, oh, it's a Strat with a Gibson radius. Sounds like, you know, it'll be nice and easy to play. And then I did, and then once I put these, you know, fat frets, it's probably one of like my easiest playing guitars.
Yeah, totally. This has got small frets in it, but it needs to. I'm going to get it refretted with medium jumbos or something.
Yeah.
Because and they sound alright. I mean, they're. But even then, I mean, this has got the action on this is ridiculous. It's probably only a millimeter.
Okay.
And no buzzing anywhere.
Nice.
You can bend everywhere and. Without issue. It's crazy.
I found though, like at least for the way I play, the tall frets make a difference because you can keep the action low, but you still have room to, you know, go and bend up. I find like with small frets, low action doesn't work for me. I need to actually jack the action up. You know, like a vintage Strat, for example. I can't play those things. You know.
Yeah, well, that's what these are. These are pretty vintagey, like, and the only reason the action's low is I think it's sort of dropped when the weather changed a little bit because it used to be a little higher than that, but it's still playing great. So yeah. But anyway, it's pretty beat up, and this guitar it was the one guitar I took when we went to Europe.
Oh, nice.
And this is quite a hot single coil. It's one of Glenn's. I think he calls it the Cruel Mistress. So it's about 8 or 9K. So it's a fairly hot Telecaster pickup.
Yeah.
I've been tempted to put a humbucker in there and then.
That Teddy pickup's sweet.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, I don't know, but I love humbuckers in the bridge. That's kind of.
You know what you could do is Demeter makes this mid boost that you can. I don't know if you're like open to, you know, putting an active circuit inside, but you can switch it in and out. And it's got a volume knob, so it just keeps adding mids as you go. Ages back, I played this Asher, the Bill Asher guitar, which was 3, I think, Lindy Fralin single coils, Strat pickups, but it had that mid boost, and you know it just really fattened it up, almost like where it was like a fat P90 almost humbucker kind of a.
Have you ever played the Eric Clapton Strat that had
I have ages back, but it was like a 80s one or something like that. And again, yesterday, another thing I was like really like this close to buying was that EMG David Gilmour set.
Yeah.
With the...
They're actually really good. They know, I mean, they get a lot of flack, but they actually... I mean, the thing is, with Gilmour, with those heavy fuzz and things, you can't have hum and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So they worked for that, and they sounded enough like a Strat that it just worked great.
Here's the funny thing, right? Everyone, like, hey, Black Star Blues, are you like a big David Gilmour fan? Are you named the band after Gilmour's Strat? I said, no, my Strat was black. But when I got into Gilmour, he was playing a red Strat. And it was during the Pulse... The Pulse tour.
Oh, I loved it, yeah.
Man, that was like some of my favorite Gilmour tones are from that era, you know. And
Delicate Sound of Thunder.
Yeah.
Man, just killer. That whole album is that. I think it's the red
It is.
red Strat with
Yeah.
the MGs, and it's
It was,
and the live recording, and it sounds amazing.
It was one of the earliest reissues. I think 87 or something is when they made those 57 reissues. But he was having massive issues with the lighting rig interfering in the guitar pickups, vintage style Strat pickups. So he went with the EMGs, and like that rig just sounds great. Which is, again, now they've got them like an all black pickup config.
You know how he gets the thing. I saw an interview with him, and they were saying to him, "How'd you get it to sound so amazing on Delicate Sound of Thunder?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Turn the amp up to the point when it hurts." Or something along those lines, And he said, you want it to sound good, you got to get it so it's like right on the edge of feedback, and just like, and that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like an amp that's just pushing, And even if he plays light, it's so dynamic and open, and that's what's awesome to me. Have you heard any of his new stuff that's just come out?
I just heard the most recent one, which is quite a nice. I think he uses the Les Paul or something for the solo at the end. Yeah, that was cool.
It's interesting, isn't it? Kind of reminded me a little bit of old Mark Knopfler. Sort of a little bit folky, a little bit, kind of ambient, Celtic-y kind of vibes and things. I sort of thought, interesting. Speaking of Glenn, did we have a question last week from Glenn that we never got through?
Yes, he wanted us to talk a little bit about vibrato.
The pedal or the technique?
The technique, I'm guessing.
Okay. I'm guessing too. Yeah, because those pedals are like the unobtainiums. I don't get why, because I didn't think they were good when I remember playing them back in the day.
Or the VB2.
But, yeah. I was just like, I remember playing them like in, the late 80s.
They have a Wazacraft version
early 90s.
Now. So they're not that unobtainium anymore. Anyway.
But the original ones pay a heap for. Vibrato, so, I mean, the kind of way I do it, I guess, if that's any use to anyone, but I go with, like, I tend to try and get a very singing style vibrato. So not too fast generally, but then, if I do want the faster vibrato, I do the Stevie Ray thing.
How do you choose what speed you want to go with?
I go with whichever I hear.
Okay.
At the particular moment, I never decide anything in advance with almost anything. The only other type of vibrato I do is sometimes I do the side to side like a classical player.
Oh yeah.
Kind of harder to hear, but it's but I like that too, especially for a ballad or something like that. And you can actually do that on chords a little bit.
Yeah.
In there a little, you know what I mean? So I do that, but for me the speed of vibrato probably it's some relation to the tune.
Yeah.
But I never really think about it. Generally I don't like too fast vibrato because I don't like singers that sing that way. I was listening to Randy Crawford the other night, and as great as she was, her vibrato was like that kind of thing, and I just like, she's amazing, but I still like that vibrato. I don't like fast vibrato.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like the real singing style vibrato.
Yeah.
And for me now, second nature. I don't even think about it. You know what I mean? Like subtle, I think is the best thing. There is the only other vibrato I've kind of experimented with a bit was that something I remember seeing Clapton do, where he'd do like bend up to a note, and then vibrato on the end of it. So hold the note, and then vibrato as it goes out. Which is some singers do that kind of stuff too. So but I think vibratos are very much something that gives people their individual touch.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, So that's What about you?
So you talked about the speed of the vibrato. There's also the depth of it, like how much of a variation. How wide you're gonna do it. Like I still love the old John Sykes thing when I was much younger. That ultra wide and fast thing. So that's what I was trying to like ape in my rock days. Then I kind of started listening to Gary Moore and Stevie Ray and stuff. I was like, oh, there's like a slightly different kind of a thing going on here. Like Gary's is still probably one of my favorite.
He's one of the guys I think of when I think of it for sure.
Because I noticed like his bends are fucking perfectly in tune. He doesn't like hit any bum bends, and like he sometimes hangs onto the note and then he starts giving it the shake. And all those things I start listening to his playing now. I'm listening to where the vibrato comes in. You know, where he chooses to put it in. Like, you know, if you listen to like you know, like there's no vibrato on that. It comes in. You know, somewhere
Yeah, on
there,
that,
yeah, yeah. So it's like where he puts it in. Another thing is like when you bend, especially when you put the vibrato on a bend, you like saying you're bending from like 0 to 100, right? And then you come down obviously from 100 to like maybe 90 and go back to 190. That variation needs to be consistent. You can't do like 190, 185, 170, 100. You know, that's not.
That's something that I hear a lot of players do
Yeah.
wrong though. Like,
Yep.
like instead of being your vibrato 90, say up to 100
Yep.
and back down.
Yep.
To me, it should be like 95 to 105, and it's really around the note. Otherwise, it's out of tune, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, or you're like you're hitting the note and you're coming down a little bit and hitting the note again. But I'm just saying that amount of variation that you're doing
Has to be
consistent, not like this. You know where it's like all over the place. Sometimes like I hear people try to do it, and it just sounds like they're just randomly shaking the. Another thing,
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, especially
But
like
to me, it's like. Sorry, I was going to say, to me, it's one of the ways that you can be most expressive in playing is how you do the vibrato. Do you know what I mean? The one time I do use fast vibrato, I should say, I forgot to say it before, is like if I'm wanting it as an effect.
Yeah.
You know, like a very deliberate effect. It's not like a regular thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to put this in here to make a statement.
Yeah. Another thing, like in terms of the mechanics of it, like I'm using that as the fulcrum. And almost like a lever, like where that's the.
Yeah, I think I am too.
That's the exaggerated motion of what's happening. It's pivoting off that ball over here.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought about that, but I do that too.
Yeah, because like someone asked me like where is your hand pivoting against, and I had to like look at it and say, okay, that's what's happening. So like, you know, though this angle is kind of awkward, but. And I found the toughest thing at one point was to vibrato just off that, because everything else I'm kind of using the other ones as support. But
much like bending, right? You try and bend with your first finger.
Yeah,
it's all
that took me a while to get that action smooth. So, you know, sometimes you just have to put in the work and maybe take like a couple of days to just sit around doing that.
I do hear people doing stuff like instead of like if this is their note, they go.
Yeah, I've seen Clapton doing this. His entire hands off the board, and he still gets it perfectly.
I don't like that. To me, it's like your thumb's not on the neck. You've got no power anymore. It's like no.
It feels weird to me, but I guess he's probably using some other muscles in his hand that I'm not, you know. But you know,
or maybe he was just being a showman. Could have been part of that.
No,
he knew everyone was watching, so it was
pretty effortlessly. He's like not even thinking about it, but it's like, you know, something like that going on. Anyway, that and
what does he know about guitar anyway?
Only everything that I've learned.
Yeah, exactly. I was kidding.
Another thing I learned from Gilmour is there's times like where you only use the bar. You know, and even Gary Moore, like for the that's all bar vibrato. And I don't know if you've ever heard, you know, that loner. There's an original version on a Cozy Powell album called Over the Top, which was actually written by Max Middleton, who played keys with Jeff Beck. And that song was dedicated to Jeff Beck and played by this guy called Clem Clemson, who played in Humble Pie after Peter Frampton left. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know, it follows the same melody, but the middle section is totally different. So if you haven't checked that out, and you're a big Gary Moore fan, you may want to, you know, have a listen. It's called The Loner on this Cozy Powell album called Over the Top. And that album also does feature Gary Moore on it, on another song. And I think Jack Bruce is on bass or something like that. It's pretty cool.
Just thinking about one that if people want to hear a real masterclass in vibrato is probably Brick in the Wall.
Yeah.
That solo that Gilmour plays in that is like, you know, it's very deliberate where he's playing things and how he's doing his vibrato, and it's a bending masterclass in itself too.
Even the intro of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, that's like got some killer vibrato on that.
Man, did you see that Lee Ritenour thing the other day where he, the interview where he was talking about they got him in to play the Brick in the Wall solo at the end because Gilmour had run out of ideas? It's like, what?
So
I never heard that before.
Just play some licks and then he'll play it again.
And then he'll play his own version, but you've just inspired some ideas because they couldn't find an ending. And I was like, wow, like, that's crazy. The other one was the he talked about the outro solo to
Comfortably Numb?
no, Give Me the Night, George Benson.
Oh, okay.
One of the engineers apparently wiped George Benson's guitar part on the end of the guitar solo, Give Me the Night.
Yeah.
You know, and so they got Lee Ritenour to come in and replace, because they couldn't get George back in. They didn't want to tell him because they felt really bad. And they got Lee to come in. They still had George's scat vocal, so he knew what the notes were meant to be.
Oh, yeah.
And he had to try and match that exact guitar tone, which they reckon, you know,
got pretty close.
It's pretty close. I can't tell where the changeover is.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. Like, man, I mean, listen to all those years, and I thought it was George Benson the whole way, right? Like, why would someone else play it, you know? But yeah, so he did a lot of things. He was also, in Comfortably Numb playing the high string guitar. I always thought that was a 12 string. No, it was him and Gilmour in the same room. He was playing a high string and Gilmour was playing a regular acoustic. And they played it at the same time, looking at each other while they're playing it. That's like...
Crazy.
Man. After all those years, again, of hearing that and just assuming it was Gilmour on a 12-string. And no, it was a session guy involved.
Yeah.
So, there you go. Guy Pratt played on a lot of that stuff too, didn't he? He was with Pink Floyd for...
I think he came
guy.
in only on The Division Bell. He's playing on 3 songs on that, according to his autobiography.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, because he's been doing some YouTube videos I saw recently, and he was talking about various sessions he was on, and because he played like a Virgin Madonna and all those sort of things, and he didn't even remember doing it. She played it to him, and he said, "This is really good. It's going to be a hit."
He's also playing on
like,
a Bollywood soundtrack by this composer called A.R. Rahman. So he's been on that, and that's like, I think the first time I read about him was on there, and then I was like, oh, this guy's played with Pink Floyd as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a session guy. He's going to play with whoever can pay him money, really, isn't he?
And an excellent stand-up comedian as well, in case you haven't seen, because his book is one of the funniest written books I've ever read. I just laughed my ass off reading the whole thing. It's called My Bass and Other Animals. So that's worth checking out. And he tells about the night he got into Pink Floyd. I mean, I almost don't want to tell the story because it's worth reading. But the gist of it is, like, he was trying to practice for the audition because I think he got it at very short notice. And then his friend of his comes with a big bag of cocaine and they spend all night doing drugs. And the next day he runs there thinking he's blown the audition. And then Gilmour tells him, no, I don't want to hear you play bass. I want to hear you sing Run Like Hell. And then just then he realizes he's the perfect man for the job at that time.
Oh, what's funny, Dominic Miller talks about when he auditioned for Sting in the same kind of way, because they played one of the Sting songs and he says, oh, that's really great. Did you write that? And Sting was like, yeah, it's my song. And he was like, oh, I'm just blowing it. But he got the gig and he had it for a
very long time.
A long time.
His solo albums, I have to say, like, especially that first one called First Touch, with his daughter's hand touching the guitar, that's a lovely album. And apparently he recorded it.
He's a great player.
On a Godin, just like plugged in straight, just a little bit of reverb added, but he's got great hands, so I'm sure he can make anything.
Man, he's been around too. I mean, some of the sessions he's done, like, I didn't realize that he's on a lot of the Phil Collins things too, and like Another Day in Paradise, I'm pretty sure he's the guitar player on that, and like some really big signature things. He was in the Pretenders for a long time before, or not a long time, but a while before he joined Sting, and he's been around,
Yeah.
And he's a great player for sure. And what I like about him too is that you don't really ever hear him overdoing it. It's always just a very tasteful kind of part, Yeah,
and he gets a great tone as well, electric or acoustic. Speaking of great tones, I heard a killer album today that just came out today, in fact, by Tom Bukovac and Guthrie Trapp. It's called...
Oh, it's in stereo?
In stereo, yeah. I just bought it on Bandcamp today because it hasn't come out on streaming yet, so I figured like $10 is nothing, for an album that good. It's a great mix reference. It's produced...
I'd rather support them that way anyway, though, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's mixed really well. The production is great. It's a good reference for guitar sounds in case someone is wanting some of that in that particular vein.
I assume you've heard Plexi Soul then?
Yeah. And
That album's killer.
that is, and also that Trip the Witch, which he did with Dean DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots. That's a great album as well. When I bought Plexi Slow, I bought the backing tracks as well. He had that as on sale as another album. So
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's still there. Go and check it out. I mean, it's nice, fun jamming on some of the songs.
You could just do that with Moises now anyway,
You
right?
could, but I mean, you might as well just support him, and if he's
Yeah.
putting it out for sale, I'm happy to.
And it's actually probably better anyway because it's the real tracks
Yeah.
without, any kind of bleed or whatever.
Pretty
Yeah, it'd
much.
be interesting, because things like that, like Steve Vai did that Naked Tracks, I think he called it. But with the AI stuff, you can just do it yourself now,
Because people
It's
ask me
gonna
for
change
backing
that.
tracks or Black Sabbath Blue stuff. I just go to Moises and take the guitar out and jam along. Party,
It's pretty
party
amazing,
on.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, you can actually isolate the guitar track from it and just listen to that in isolation. So because a lot of people ask me for tabs as well, and I can't read and write tab, unfortunately. So
I don't like tab anyway. Or if people ask me, I'm always like, it's not going to do you any good to use tab, so just don't.
there's so
Unless you're a complete beginner.
Yeah.
But then why are you coming to me if you're a complete beginner? You need to go to someone who's a beginner teacher, because I only teach advanced students anyway. But it's an interesting thing because I don't think tab does anything for anyone. It really doesn't. I mean, it tells you where to put your finger,
and half the time it's wrong.
but half the time it's wrong. But that doesn't even. That's only part of the equation. Like, what rhythmic value do we play it? How's it supposed to sound? Like, all those things.
Yeah, and you
really-
just see the note for vibrato is just like a squiggle, but how much of it you put in?
Yeah.
Where does it come in? And sometimes you can't notate stuff, when it's like slightly ahead or behind the beat. You don't get those inflections or whatever. And I mean, there's
Whereas like real notation, which I prefer, is closer, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, that's the language that people use. Like, you go and talk to a piano player and show them tab and see how far you get. You know what I mean? So I'm always like, you might as well, if you're going to spend your time doing anything, learn real music, because it's at least chord charts.
Yeah, and then
I always say
train your ears. I mean, you can go to YouTube now and
Yeah,
put the
exactly.
song onto half speed without slowing down the tempo. I would have killed for that when I was a kid. I used to
I
have
know.
a little screwdriver that I would put into my Walkman and slow the motor speed down just so I could learn shit. But then I had to transpose it back to the key I was in. So if you just press a button and get it at half speed, that's more than anyone would ever need. Just go one note at a time. And you get this software called Transcribe as well. So if you load your track,
Yeah.
it'll show you the piano roll where all the notes are. So
Man, and it's crazy, when I first was transcribing, and it was records, my parents' records, and I used to put the coins on them, and if you put the right amount of coins, you could get it to slow down by half, which meant if you got it the right amount, you could get it an octave lower, which was so much. But sometimes it was like, you'd take a 5-cent piece off and put a 10-cent piece on or whatever, and we had to do that, and it was, much better for you, I think, to have to actually use your ears. And then, of course, tapes came in, and we liked the tape players that had a full rewind and stuff, so that you could actually, like, it was a real touch thing. You got used to, like, hitting it just the right amount to skip back, and then you'd blow it, and you go, like, 2 bars back instead of 1 bar back and rewind, and you're trying to hold that information in your mind, and it's crazy. And then I remember taking a lesson with this guy, Australian saxophone player, Jamie Olders, and he said to me, have you ever thought about transcribing in real time as it's happening? And I thought, oh, wow. And he goes, take something simple and see if you can figure it out. It's like a Miles Davis solo or something, and just start from something that's not too technically hard, but go, right, and there's no stopping and pausing and whatever. You go from beginning of the solo to the end of the solo, and then you can go right back to the beginning and through. But that's all you're allowed to do, and you got to try and pick up a couple more notes the next time and then retain them in your mind. And the next time you go back, you got to take a couple more notes and just keep adding to it. And that did wonders for my ear and things, well, thanks so much. Well, Warren's computer stuff has gone down, so thanks so much for watching, everyone. See you next week, Cheers.